What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined as always by my dad Sean, and today at Reactions to the Classics, we're going to get our shoe gaze on
We are, man.
for the first time here, and what better way to start than with My Bloody Valentine, very legendary record, Loveless, and this comes courtesy to us from a suggestion from our patron, Harry, and I'm very much looking forward to diving into this and really describing the stuff that led up to the creation of this album.
Yes.
I would say, even if you don't know who My Bloody Valentine is, or are a regular viewer of this channel and probably wouldn't even like this record, I think you'll enjoy just the kind of wild stories that went behind this, and how Kevin Shields brought this record together, man.
Yeah.
So very excited to get into the quick facts and track by track of this. Before that, though, if you could just do us a favor, hit that big thumbs up. That helps us out in the old YouTube algorithm, and hit that big red subscribe button. We upload every day here at Reactions to the Classics, and if you want to link up with us more, you can check out our social media down below, especially our Facebook group. We got a podcast every Friday that goes into some long form stuff, and you can even support us on Patreon,
yes,
like our guy Harry, and you can check that link out there as well. But I guess all that to say, man, we're gonna get into the quick facts, but before we do, I just wanted to read a little quote from Harry here. He wrote a review of it, and I asked if I could quote him on
that's
it.
Great.
And just since it is a 10 out of 10 record for Harry, I thought he had some good stuff to say. He said, "People often like to say this album is a perfect example of an album that sounds like its cover. With its soft, out-of-focus pink hues, Kevin Shields manages to create some of the most unique guitar sounds ever put to tape. Noisy yet warm, the vast sonic soundscapes will always transcend me. I once heard it described as feeling like an embodiment of melancholy, like you're falling in love, but the kind of love that happened a long time ago, and all you have left is the memory of it." I just thought that was a very
that's a fantastic,
great little paragraph.
Pull up a third chair for Harry here, man. That was really good. I don't think I can top that through the rest of this review.
But yeah, that just kind of, I guess, sets the stage here, and we're going to set up a little longer than usual on the quick facts here. They won't be as quick as
No, and you won't be disappointed by that, though. It's not going to be like, well, this dude shut up, because the stories here are unbelievable. We'll get to the normal stuff. Second studio album, November 1991, only went to number 24 in the UK. Took 2.5 years, 19 studios, and 250,000 pounds.
Ooh.
Just to get to this thing. They had 2 previous EPs before this, but their record label Creation thought this was going to be some sort of insane thing. You already mentioned Kevin Shields. He got so much praise from this. Some people were saying he sonically reinvented the guitar, but they went through a ton of engineers on this. As Kevin said, they didn't trust them to do anything. Quote, "These engineers, with the exception of Alan Moulder and later Angeli Dutt, were all just people who came with the studio. Everything we wanted to do was wrong, according to them. The band gave credit on the album sleeve to all those present during the recording, even though, quote, even if they did was fixed T, according to Kevin." So now we go into these studios, and for the vocals, Bilinda Butcher, who's also their guitarist, although, by the way, she didn't play any guitar on this. She said she didn't mind. Kevin played all the guitar.
And that is the distinctive driving force of this entire record.
Yeah, she said, "I didn't think I was that good anyway. I didn't care that you did it." But Bilinda comes down to the studio, and her and Kevin put curtains over, separating from where we're recording, to the engineers behind the deck. And so the engineers were also not allowed to listen to what they were recording.
Yeah, they had to just look at the little audio levels.
Yeah, they look at the little audio levels, and then if it was a good recording, they would run over to the curtain, open up the curtain, wave, and basically the engineers knew to save that. If the engineers saw the music stop and they didn't come over, they'd know they'd have to rewind the tape and continue on. So that's a little weird to begin with.
Already getting into those idiosyncrasies of Kevin and company here.
For sure. Now, Kevin's unpredictable behavior, the constant delays, studio changes were having a big-time effect on the Creation label's finances and the health of their staff. Their second in command, Dick Green, actually had a nervous breakdown. Green recalled, "It was 2 years into the album. I phoned Kevin up in tears. I was going, 'You have to deliver me this record.'" Green's hair actually turned gray overnight, which many attributed to the album. It's crazy what stress can do to you in your life, and you're a small record label, and this band is going around spending all your money and money you don't even have. There's even a crazy story where well, one of the studios, Creation, couldn't pay him, so Kevin had to go raise some money to get the band's gear out of there because they'd left the gear there the day before. And in the middle of this recording, both Belinda and Kevin are diagnosed with tinnitus.
Yeah, the ringing of the ears.
The ringing of the ears, and everyone says because they played at their shows so loudly.
Yeah, that's one of the legendary things of My Bloody Valentine that was fun to discover, that they would go up to sometimes 130 decibels at their concerts.
Yeah. And I read several critics who said this was the loudest concert they'd ever heard. This was the loudest concert they ever heard. They kept thinking this is not going to stop. Everyone got so uncomfortable after the first song thinking it's going to turn down. But they did not ever do that. But Kevin said this is just ill-informed hysteria. That wasn't why we both had that, which obviously, Kevin, that was why you both had that. The album was also edited on an aged machine that had been used to cut together dialogue for movies in the 70s. Its computer threw the entire album out of phase. Shields was able to put it back together from memory, which is amazing in its own right. But it took 13 days to master the album rather than the usual one, which is just another thing that Creation Records was amazed with. Now, Kevin wrote about 2/3 of the lyrics, so Belinda wrote about 1/3 of them. But basically, they would show up at the studio. Sometimes Kevin would sing the song himself, and then she would be sitting next to him, writing down the lyrics she thought he was singing, and then she would just try to sing the same thing. Their bassist, Debbie, and I hope I'm saying her name right, Googe, I've never seen that last name before. She said she would come to the studio every day, but after a little while, she felt like there was no point in her being there.
I'm not being used,
So she just stopped coming because Kevin played the bass well. He was the only one on any of these, except for there's a little bit of drumming, which we'll get into in a minute. But she still received credit on the album, so that was nice of them to do that for her.
Yeah, and the kind of sound on this is definitely, as I mentioned, guitar driven.
Yeah.
Kevin utilizing that. He got a lot of the sound, the whirliness from using the tremolo bar on his guitar.
Very famous for that.
And that
is the name of their second EP.
And then that's kind of been coined as the glide guitar, just with how the sound is able to be used there. He noted that a lot of people think we're using like hundreds of different tracks and guitars and overdubs, but we're using less than what most little home demo tapes would have. And the glide guitar really just bends the guitar string slightly in and out of tune. Unlike a lot of bands in the shoegazing movement in the 90s, My Bloody Valentine did not use any chorus pedals. Shields said, "No other band played that guitar like me. We did everything solely with the tremolo arm." He said that the songs were really simply structured. A lot of them are purposefully like that. That way you can get away with a lot more when you mess around with the contents. And all but 2 of the songs were just the drums from Colm, their drummer. He was very ill during the recording of this. Man. He was able only to come in live on 2 of the tracks, one of them just being a 56-second kind of a drum kind of a highlight, and the rest they just used from samples that he was able to record, and they were able to piece that together.
That way Kevin didn't need anybody else.
I was about to say, Kevin, as you can tell, really is kind of the driving head of this record.
To say the least. And the vocals on this, and Kevin addresses this. He addresses the fact that he got so sick of working on the vocals because this album obviously drug on for so long. That, I mean, sometimes he would actually be singing the higher register and Belinda would be singing the lower, but he said just kind of mixed them into one vocal on a lot of these songs where it just sounds like one person is singing them.
Yeah.
And some of them it is only him singing. But he also sampled Belinda's vocals and kind of mixed them in as instrumentation. So it's hard to explain until you just hear the album and you're like, oh.
Yeah, because the voices are in this whole record are very buried in the mix.
Yeah, and that's exactly. That's the thing. Like the vocals are not first and foremost, not anywhere close. I'm actually, when we get into the songs, going to give you a score out of 10 of how much you can even hear the lyrics.
Yeah.
How deep are they buried? And there's really not much to their lyrics. If you just read, it's not really about that. They would actually write the lyrics sometimes right before they would record the album. Now, Trey, they eventually got to a third album, but way later.
22 years.
22 years later, because after this album, Kevin went their separate ways and then officially break up, but he started recording some stuff, almost had a whole album, according to legend at least, of his own stuff, and then he just threw it out because he said if I can't top what I did before,
Yeah.
I just don't want to do it at all. And so the music press said he kind of became unhinged. And we know how press sometimes, magnify stuff, but they started comparing him to Syd Barrett of Pink Floyd and Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
Yeah, and once the album was released, it got a lot of positive press.
Tons of positive press, but
Creation, the label, was pleased with it, but they ended up saying, like, okay, well, this is a really great record, but it doesn't seem like the type of album that's going to recoup the money we poured into it. Alan McGee, one of the heads at Creation, kind of noted the same thing, and it was like, I don't know if I want to go through this with Kevin again.
He said, I'm absolutely not. It's him or me, so it's going to be him.
And so then they funded a short tour in 1991, and then shortly after that, they released My Bloody Valentine from the label. Alan just said it was just too much to deal with, and then that's where, that's why there's such a huge gap. So between their second and third record, and I think at the end of the day, that just kind of adds to the legend of this record.
I think it does, and I mean. And Kevin came out later and said that 250,000 pounds, that had anything to do with all us changing studios. He goes, it was more for us to live. It was our living money for 2.5 years, and we barely spent a fraction of that in the studio. Yeah. Whether or not they did is neither here nor there, but I know that was an extremely long fax. We won't even call it quick fax, but man, you got to understand, I haven't come across an album with a story like this ever, and that's saying something because we've reviewed a lot of things, but that's going to take us to the album itself.
Yeah, we're going to start off with Only Shallow, and this really kind of sets the stage of what you're getting into with this record.
And it was a single. It was their second single. Did go to number 27 on the modern rock chart. So.
And that's an important note, too. The singles that were released here were released after the album came out because in the lead-up, the band said, we don't want to release any singles. We don't want to have our name on the cover and whatnot.
And this was their only single to ever chart in the U.S.
So very interesting. It has, you're immediately met by the loud, almost grindy guitars, and then it stops, gives the mellow kind of vocal delivery, and that's a big part of the shoegaze movement, kind of the loudness of the guitars being contrasted with almost the sweet, dreamy-like vocals from Belinda and Kevin just kind of blended together here. I really enjoyed this one quite a bit, actually. Ended up being one of my favorites on the entire record, and I think it's a great opener.
Mine as well. You can't decipher the lyrics real well. I'm going to say it's about a 7 out of 10. A 10 on vocals, what I can hear. So like a 10 out of 10 be I can hear your vocals perfectly and it's the focal point of the song. This is a 7 out of 10, so I can decipher them. I can't really exactly tell what they're saying most of the time, but the tone of them is quite nice.
Yeah, I think thematically a lot of these tracks kind of deal with that relationship loss, that sexual lust at times, that pull of wanting to be in love yet wanting to be alone type of thing here. And I think that's kind of what we have a little bit on this first track, man, but great way to start us off.
Yeah, and getting back to, it's going to be a broken record, so to speak, but Kevin's guitar sound on here, he used a unique setup for this one. He said it's just 2 amps facing each other with tremolo, and the tremolo on each amp is set to a different rate. There's a mic between the 2 amps. I did a couple of overdubs of that, then I reversed it and played it backwards into a sampler. I put them on top of each other so they kind of merged in. Honestly, I have no idea what any of that means, but it just shows you that like this dude knew exactly what he wanted to do at all times.
Oh yeah, and the last 35 seconds does a huge shift, almost like ending the tension of the previous 4 minutes. Kind of tough to articulate some of these sounds because you just got to experience them, but it was a marvelous transition. Then we go into the 2.5 minute track next, Loomer.
Yeah, only 8 verses. For me, vague lyrics. I can't really understand them. I would say a 5 out of 10 on being able to understand. The guitars, as always, are top notch.
Yeah, another heavy song that's veiled with a gorgeous melody here. Belinda's vocals are higher in the mix than our previous track. Again, one that you can kind of interpret just based on the listener here. I like the little songwriting technique of tipping down to the holy places, then in the second verse down to the lonely places, almost like a Loomer, somebody's
Right.
hovering over you. That's kind of what I got from it. Just lyrically there, another fine track. Not as couldn't live up to the opener, man,
No.
but still solid. Then we go to the shortest track on here, "Touched," which was one of only two that Colm was actually live in studio.
56-second instrumental.
Yeah, so it's fine. It was fine for what it was. Just almost was like an extension, almost of a track, just since.
Just like a chilled little thing in between.
And then that takes us now to track number 4.
To Hear Knows When. I found the lyrics vague, Trey, maybe talking about sex. The vocals are just buried in the mix. I would say they're almost at a level of 1 out of 10. I mean, you can't really even understand it. But of course, great atmosphere with the guitars. The guitar solo at the end is just totally different.
Yeah, it's very muddied. I thought that was
Yeah.
a great touch at the end because you're just introduced to, again, just a very big soundscape
Very
coming
big,
in.
man.
And very sexy type of track, just based on the lyrical content. Keys are a little more prominent, especially halfway through the song, and this kind of had the vibe like I was in a druggy or a drunk, hazy type of state, which I guess reflects a little bit of what Harry was saying at the start with the cover, where it's kind of out of focus at times.
It fits the album perfectly.
Oh, definitely, man. So this was a very solid track.
I agree.
I enjoyed it, man. And then that takes us to track number 5, "When You Sleep."
The first single, it actually sounds like Belinda's singing on it, but she's actually not. Only Kevin is. Just the way he mixed it, he said that it makes it sound like her, but it's only him. In it, for me, it appears he cares for her deeply, but they don't see each other all the time. And the other person doesn't seem to mind that arrangement. That's kind of what I got out of it. In the instrumentation, the drumming can be heard more. Voices are still really faded. There may be a 6 out of 10. I can't really decipher them. I keep wanting to turn the voice up just a little bit. I'm like, can we mix this up to like a 7.5 out of 10 so I can hear it? It's a good track. I like it.
Oh, yeah. The transition from the previous tune to this one's great because it almost has like a whistle, I guess I'd say, kind of a effect in there. So it just immediately just strikes you and you're in it, man. And a couple of cool little lyrical lines in here. "And it won't be long once in a while when you make me smile and you turn your long blonde hair," which reflects that pain where you love somebody, but then they turn their long blonde hair and they're gone, man. So this perfectly encapsulated for me the love, the joy that love can bring, but also that confusion and sadness whenever that leaves. So I thought this track was brilliant. Definitely one of my favorites on the
it's
record.
one of my favorites too.
Great melody.
That brings us to I Only Said. Just 2 verses, 8 lines. Shields is singing, although, I mean, it's probably a 2 out of 10. You can barely decipher what's going on. But I know if you're listening to this and you've never heard this album, you're like, dude, then why would I want to listen to this? It just works with where they're going.
Yeah, the vocal mix isn't the most important part, like other rock music and music that this is just about the experience of the whirling, the gliding guitars,
it's the experience,
which we have more here. Another great atmosphere. I enjoyed the story of this one as well. The lyrics, though vague, do kind of pack a punch whenever you decipher them and kind of look how they connect in the whole album with the themes of the relationships lost and whatnot. Here he's seemingly in love with this girl, wants to be under her, but then the second verse comes and he sees another guy in the position that he wants to be, essentially. So I thought this was another hit for me, and again, another gorgeous sounding song. Just those guitar tones, man. Harry said it best, like Kevin's able to reinvent the guitar in a sense here in the 90s with sounds you've never really heard before. Yeah,
and that takes us to Come In Alone, where now, talking about the guitars, now the vocals are going to come way up. Probably 7.5 or 8 on being able to hear the vocals. And in that, the vocals sound very good, very strong performance here vocally. What this song's about, Trey, I'm not really sure.
You got the line, "Come in alone, you will love to let go, and I'll turn you around when your hopes gave me doubts." Here she seemingly leaves him, and I felt the theme of loneliness and living with the fact we come into this world and ultimately die on our own. We got to accept that even if we try to run away from it. As you mentioned, clearer vocals, had a more heavier, crunchy guitar in here that was less built on the gliding and whirliness that we've kind of expected from the sound up to this point. Another tune that I enjoyed on here.
Well, now we're going to come to a tune that I really enjoyed. Sometimes
Oh yeah, this was one of my favorites.
I don't know if I'd call it a ballad, but it's the closest thing to a ballad that My Bloody Valentine ever created. The lyrics basically tell the story, for me at least, kind of a one-night stand, but maybe he has feelings for her, but he's going to get away from her before she can hurt him. I would say this one's about a 5 or a 6 on being able to hear the voice in there with Shields' softened lyrics. It's just great. It adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah, this was maybe the most dreamy track
Yeah,
on
dreamy
the record.
is a good way of putting it.
Great atmosphere here, and it left you, the listener, for me at least, feeling sad, but being comfortable in that sadness. Which
that's a good way of putting it.
I think that's a great way to describe in My Bloody Valentine in general here. Probably the best story on this entire record, maybe the most straightforward. He notes at the start how he wants to make this girl feel the way he loves this or that, but at the end of the day, he, I think, gets a little maybe scared of that in a sense. He leaves before either one of them can be hurt, which just is a straightforward story that I think some of us can relate to if we're not not careful. In a sense, we kind of want that love, but are scared of what would happen if it were ever to break. So just a wonderful song.
Yeah, and that's going to take us to another wonderful song, Blown a Wish. Belinda's singing here. I think it starts out kind of as a casual thing, but then it turns to love in that second verse. Almost sounds like some strings in here. The last section's great. It says, fall apart, my beating heart, nothing left to do. Once in love, it'll be the death of you. Once again, her vocals are only probably like at a 4 out of 10 on mixing, being able to hear it, but it just works for the song.
I don't have much to add there. Again, enjoyed Belinda's blues and the dreaminess there. I just love the contrast between the heavy guitars that are on this record, the big sounds that are coming through your headphones, which if you listen to this, go with those.
Oh yeah, you got to go with the headphones.
Studio headphones, man. And then you got that dreaminess of her vocals. Not a standout for me, but still solid nonetheless. And we only got a couple tracks left.
Yeah, What You Want, broken record, but the vocals are buried pretty far in the mix. I think it basically is about he keeps going back to her. What did you get out of it?
Yeah, I think thematically this seems to revolve around a broken relationship and the desire to be back together, even if this may only happen in a memory. I'm curious of other interpretations. This one was one of the more vague ones on the record, but here, the last minute strips of those guitars back that we're so used to hearing and lets the keyboard sampler create a almost like my head was in the clouds type of atmosphere. So even in the tracks, there is some shifts in here to just keep it sonically interesting throughout the runtime of this album, especially on this track, which was a little bit longer and transitions us to the final song, which is one of the longest on the record.
Yeah, it's 7 minutes long. It's called Soon. And this song's more upbeat when compared to the other tracks on the album.
I liked how it kind of ended the record on a different note than a lot of the other tracks we've had on the album up to this point. It had a bit more clear vocals and maybe the most traditional song on here, yet still has those affected guitars that we know and love with that danceable beat, man. I enjoyed the fact they ended this and showed they can merge their sound with more traditional sounds and yet still keep their same tone and uniqueness at the same time, man. So great way to close this record out. And now that'll take us to our favorite tracks. I gotta go with Sometimes, Only Shallow, and When You Sleep.
And I'm going to add those 3 on my list and Blown a Wish.
There you go, man. And now that'll take us to our overall score.
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys, the first time I listened to this album, I didn't hate it at all. I was like, this is interesting. Like, I don't know what I think of this. I had to listen to it several times to sort of get it. For what it is, like, it is definitely an innovative, crazy thing. Like, I knew the name, but I never heard any of this ever. And if you like music, you should listen to it. I'm not telling you you'll love the album and go buy it, but you should experience it.
Oh yeah, just for how it stretched the guitar sound and just how it sounds, man.
Yeah, so for that, I'm going to give this thing an 8.5 out of 10, which is a really high grade. Now, with that said, it's not an album I'll probably ever revisit. But I'm glad that I did.
You did, yeah. and stretching those boundaries, man. No, I'm going to be in that same ballpark for you, man. I'm going to be at an 8.75.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy this, and this is one I think I actually will
that's
revisit.
cool, man.
You know, never really had heard a shoegaze record.
No, me neither.
So
man.
diving into the most acclaimed one, I think was the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
This is one you just turn on and you really just experience those guitar tones, experience just the sound coming at you, get lost in it. I kind of felt like as I'm listening to this record, I was, you know, outside at 2 a.m. There's a light drizzle coming down.
Yeah.
I got the neon lights from the bar on one end and the strip club on the other shining
good.
on
I
me.
like that, man.
And I'm waiting for the bus to come pick me up, man. That's just kind of what I got
That's
as
a wonderful way of painting it.
as a listener here, man. Just really enjoyed this. As you said, if you listen to this, you maybe it won't be your thing. You might not enjoy it just due to how kind of different it is in a sense. But for a genre and for what it does, man, I do think it's deserving of the acclaim.
I do too. Most definitely.
I appreciate Harry for bringing this to
I do
us.
too, man.
For sure, man. And let us know down below, y'all, what you think of Loveless. Do you think it's a masterpiece? Do you think it's overrated? Do you think this or that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And as always, Dad, appreciate the research, especially on this one.
Yeah, man, it was fun.
On this one. But thanks for joining us today, y'all. Happy listening, and we will see you next time.